Honda's CEO is basically telling the EV industry, you guys can copy our screens, you can copy our software, you can even copy our motors, but you can't copy this. And no, I'm not talking about some magical new battery. I'm not talking about a 1,000-mile range claim that was measured downhill with a tailwind and a therapist in the passenger seat. I'm talking about an engine detail, and it's the kind of detail that makes EV rivals quietly swallow hard, because it's not something you can buy off the shelf. And the craziest part? Honda is hiding it in the most unsexy disguise possible, a CR-V. Yeah, a practical family crossover. The car your aunt buys because it just works, which is exactly why this is terrifying. Because if Honda can make this work in a CR-V, what happens when they scale it? We're gonna break down the CEO quote, the receipts, what Honda is actually building, why it matters, why competitors can't copy it quickly, and then, at the end, I'll tell you the one engine detail that makes this whole plan unfair. For the last few years, the car world has been living inside one word, EV. Every launch, every press conference, every future of mobility PowerPoint. It's batteries, batteries, batteries. And Honda's CEO, Toshihiro Mibe, knows that better than anyone, because he's literally the guy steering Honda through the stop being an engine company era. Honda has even openly said it's shifting from engines to zero-emission vehicles like EVs and fuel cell vehicles. And Mibe has talked about how weird that is for Honda, because engines are basically Honda's identity. He's admitted it's hard to even process being told to abandon what Honda is best at. But here's the twist. Honda's version of moving on from engines isn't the same as everyone else's, because Honda's not just betting on batteries, they're betting on hydrogen. And they're doing it in a way that sounds boring until you realize what it enables. And that's why Mibe's bigger message matters. Honda's goal is carbon neutral, not battery electric only. That one sentence changes everything, because if your end goal is carbon neutral, you don't worship one technology. You use whatever actually works, where it actually works. And Honda is quietly building the most interesting engine in years to prove that point. If you like breakdowns like this, where we separate real engineering from marketing perfume, hit subscribe, because the next 12 to 24 months are about to get extremely weird in the best way. So here's what Honda put on the road. The CR-V FCEV. It's a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, but here's the part that makes it different. It's also plug-in. Honda calls it America's first production plug-in FCEV, meaning you can charge it like an EV for around-town driving and refuel it with hydrogen in minutes for longer trips. Numbers, because numbers make the hype either real or embarrassing. About 29 miles of battery electric range for daily errands, then roughly 241 miles on hydrogen, with a total around 270 miles combined, EPA rated, a 17.7 kilowatt-hour battery pack, and you can refuel hydrogen in about 3 to 5 minutes. So in practice, this is a car that can behave like an EV Monday through Friday, and then behave like a gas car on Saturday when you're driving across the state. And Honda even sweetens the deal with lease perks, including up to $15,000 of hydrogen fuel credits on certain leases, because yes, hydrogen is expensive and they know it. Oh, and it can power stuff. There's a 120-volt, 1500-watt external power supply listed in the specs. So if the power goes out, this CR-V can basically become a rolling backup plan. Now, all of that is cool, but none of that is the one detail yet, because every time you hear hydrogen, you probably think, okay, but hydrogen stations barely exist. Hold that thought. We're getting there, because Honda knows that too, and the way they're attacking that problem is the first clue. Let's be honest about the current EV experience. EVs are awesome when the system supports them. If you have home charging, a stable grid, good fast chargers nearby, and you don't road trip like a maniac, EV life is smooth. But if you don't have home charging, or you live in a charging desert, or you're in an apartment, or your commute is fine, but you take long trips, the EV experience can turn into, I'm planning my life around a plug. Now look at what Honda is doing here. A plug-in fuel cell vehicle is basically saying, Use the battery when it's easy. Use hydrogen when time matters. That's not anti-EV, that's anti-hassle. And strategically, it's a direct response to the biggest adoption blockers: charging access, charging time, grid strain in peak hours, and the fact that not everyone lives inside a Tesla commercial. And Honda is hiding this strategy in a CR-V on purpose, because a CR-V is a normal car for normal people. That's how you test if a technology can leave the lab. But here's the second clue. Honda didn't build this like a one-off science project. They built it like a platform. And that matters because platforms are what scale. Here's the part people miss. When EV companies compete, it looks like a spec fight. Range versus range, charging versus charging, 0 to 60 versus 0 to 60, screen size versus screen size. But Honda's move isn't a spec fight, it's a system fight. Because to replicate what Honda is doing here, you don't just need a motor and a battery. You need high-pressure hydrogen storage that's safe in crashes and extreme temps. A fuel cell stack that works in the cold, works in heat, and lasts long enough that warranties don't bankrupt you. A manufacturing pipeline for that stack. Hydrogen supply plus stations, at least regionally. And a vehicle architecture that can blend battery plus fuel cell without feeling like a Frankenstein. That's not something you pivot into because your EV sales had a bad quarter. That's a decade-long grind. And Honda has been grinding hydrogen tech for years. In fact, Honda itself says it's been doing hydrogen and fuel cell R&D for more than 30 years. So while the EV world has been speedrunning batteries, Honda's been quietly building the other branch of the skill tree. And if you think I'm exaggerating, let's talk about what Honda is doing besides the CR-V. Okay, speculation time, but grounded speculation. Honda is part of a hydrogen engine research group called HySE, a consortium working on hydrogen-powered internal combustion engines for small mobility. This group has been serious enough to build hydrogen engine vehicles and even take them to extreme events like Dakar categories focused on next-gen powertrains. Now, does that mean Honda is dropping a hydrogen-burning Civic next year? No, but it does mean Honda is not treating hydrogen as a one-lane road. They're exploring multiple ways hydrogen can be used. Fuel cells, where hydrogen becomes electricity that powers a motor, and combustion, where hydrogen is burned like fuel in an engine. And that matters because hydrogen combustion is the keep the engine vibe alive pathway. Also, Honda has filed hydrogen combustion-related patents going back decades. Again, that doesn't confirm a production car tomorrow, but it tells you something important. Honda isn't trying hydrogen. Honda has been thinking in hydrogen for a long time. And now, suddenly, the pieces are getting more practical. Which brings us to the part Honda doesn't hype enough. Hydrogen has two giant problems. Problem number one, stations. Hydrogen refueling infrastructure is limited. Honda itself is basically treating this as a regional strategy. California is the obvious beachhead. If you live far from stations, hydrogen ownership becomes a lifestyle choice, and not the fun kind. Problem number two, manufacturing reality just punched Honda in the face. Here's the spicy, recent twist. Honda and GM's fuel cell joint venture plant, Fuel Cell System Manufacturing, or FCSM in Michigan, is being wound down, with Honda saying it will discontinue production of its current fuel cell system before the end of 2026. That's not a small headline, because the current CR-V FCEV uses a fuel cell system that Honda and GM co-developed and produced through that pipeline. And some reports say the CR-V FCEV's production could be limited by how many of those existing systems Honda has available. So Honda is basically saying, yes, we're doing hydrogen, but also, the current hardware era is temporary, which sounds like a problem, until you realize it's also a setup, because Honda has already told us what comes next, and this is where the video flips. Honda has announced a next-generation fuel cell module that it's developing independently, and Honda isn't being shy about the goals. Half the production cost compared to the current module, more than double durability, more than triple volumetric power density, with a rated output of 150 kilowatts. Production is targeted to begin in 2027, Honda's fiscal year ending March 31st, 2028. And Honda is also pushing fuel cells beyond cars into stationary power generators that can provide clean electricity to facilities, with mass production targeted in 2026, according to Honda. So, in the near term, Honda is doing two things at once, using the CR-V FCEV as a real-world testbed in a real car people actually understand, and preparing a next-gen module designed to scale into more than just one vehicle type. Now, are we finally at the one-engine detail? Yes, because Honda basically told us the secret without calling it a secret. Here it is. The detail is not hydrogen refuels fast. The detail is not 29 miles of EV range. The detail is not even, it's a CR-V. The detail is this: Honda is building the fuel cell like a modular, high-voltage compact crate engine, a standardized power unit designed to be dropped into multiple platforms and industries at half the cost, with more than double durability, and over triple the power density. That's the part EV rivals can't copy quickly, because it's not a product feature, it's a manufacturing philosophy. It's Honda saying, we're not making a hydrogen car, we're making a hydrogen engine ecosystem. And for EV-first companies, especially the ones whose entire empire is battery supply chains, this is a nightmare to replicate fast. You can't just update the software into a fuel cell module. You can't just over-the-air yourself into high-pressure hydrogen storage, fuel cell durability, cold weather performance, and a supply chain that doesn't melt down. Honda is trying to do what China did to EVs, make the powertrain a scalable commodity, but with hydrogen. And that's why this story matters. Not because hydrogen is definitely taking over, but because Honda is building a second exit ramp off the battery highway, and they're doing it with the calm confidence of an engine company that refuses to die. So here's the question I want you to answer honestly. If you could drive like an EV all week, quiet, smooth, plug in at home, and then refuel in 3 to 5 minutes for road trips, would you actually consider a plug-in fuel cell vehicle? Or is hydrogen still a cool idea that you don't trust in real life? Drop your take in the comments, because this is one of those moments where the industry could split into multiple futures. And if you want more breakdowns like this, where we expose the strategy under the specs, hit like, hit subscribe. Because next time, I want to talk about the part nobody is ready for. What happens when hydrogen stops being a car thing and starts becoming a power grid thing? See you in the next one.